session, and there was no reportable action taken in the closed session.
Thank
Now
you.
you can adjourn that meeting
I'd like to adjourn that meeting and open
and start the regular one. There we
regular.
go. Okay. I'll do roll call. So Director Clark.
Here.
Director Seaton.
Here.
Director Dye.
Here.
And Director Sugamel.
Here.
Okay. And Director Blanchard. Is that Jim? I can't tell. Jim, are you on? Okay, there's a 415 number I don't recognize. So, okay. So Director Blanchard is not on.
Before we start the meeting, I'd like to congratulate both Matthew Clark and Nancy Marsh, who is on this call, who have filed to run for positions in the Granada Community Services District. They were not opposed, so we are very pleased that we will continue to have Matthew's good judgment. And Nancy will be joining the board with us and will bring lots of energy and her experience as Parks Advisory Committee Chair and lots of experiences from her years as a international business executive to the board. So we're very lucky to have these two as part of our board starting in either December or January. I'm not sure which it'll be. So congratulations to both of them, and we're so glad you're here.
Thanks,
Thank
Buzz.
you. And it'll be December.
December. Okay, great. All right. Let us start with the consideration of the sewer connection permit for the Big Wave Wellness Project, Phase 1, APM 047-311-060, and the association connection fee waiver request from the applicant. And we'll have a staff report.
I'm going to go a little bit backwards. So did you call for public comment?
No, I thought we were going to do the staff report first before public comment. Can we
No,
do-
public comment for general public comment.
Okay, general public comment, please.
Okay, done.
Do we have anyone who would like to speak to this? Oh, for items not on the agenda?
Yes.
Right.
I'm sorry, yes, I did forget. Do we have anyone who would like to speak on items not on the agenda? No. So moving on to the agenda. In this case, we don't need to take public testimony before the staff report, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So if we could ask Chuck to give us some background on this topic, that would be great.
Okay, what's before your board is the consideration of a sewer connection permit for the Big Wave Wellness Project, Phase 1. And they've also, the proponents have asked for a connection fee waiver due to the fact that they have a developmentally disabled component to the project. So we've sent this to, and I'm gonna multitask a little here, probably not very well, but we have sent this to our district engineer, and he has calculated the capacity fees for this. So what they generally do is they look at projects like this. This is a mixed use project. So they try and discern a calculated gallons per day per resident calculation, as well as the leased office space. And so our district engineer, John Rayner from Kennedy Jenks, has calculated that this project will be assessed 14 ERUs. And as you can see on your in your agenda packet, it shows the calculations and the background behind it. So, and as I said before, past that page now is the applicant's request for a fee waiver. So maybe at this point in time, before we get to that, would the proponents like to speak to that?
I think we would like to. And I think there's some different approaches from all of us, but I think that the main issue is that this is a housing project that's supposed to be providing employment for special needs residents that live on the coast and in San Mateo County. And it's not a wealthy group. It's some of the lowest paid individuals in the spectrum of employment. It's probably about, Jeff could probably correct me, but their average income is probably a tenth of what the low income rates are in the county. And the sewer fee breaks down to about $10,000 per resident. And that's substantially more than what you would see in a single family house with an income of say $200,000 to $250,000 pulling the sewer permit. And what we would like to do is just have consideration for this community. There are a couple of ways of looking at this that would be easier potentially to swallow. We'd like to obviously see a waiver, a complete waiver of the fees. But I just wanted to point out too, the CEQA document that was done 10 years ago, we have encountered from the county and other agencies, probably about $4 million worth of fees. So it's just so we can move forward, we need to get adjustments on as much of that as possible. But jumping back to the CEQA document of, I think it was 1990 or 2016 or 2011, pardon me. That was reviewed by John and by the district engineer at the time, and they agreed to 44 gallons per capita per day. And that was for the entire development of the system. We're doing half. So just based on those figures that were approved by the district, the fees would be about a quarter of what you're looking at. And then if you just did it, equity to a typical person getting a building permit and a sewer connection in Montero, that would run about, another half of that down to about 30,000 is what a typical residential connection would be with an income of substantially greater than these folks. So what we would like to do is just consider a significant reduction in fees or a complete reduction in connection fees, because it is really well beyond what 23 special needs people can afford. So I don't know, Jeff, if you have anything to add, or Drew, but that's kind of we're asking for a practical reduction, which is what was agreed to in the CEQA documents, which were reviewed by the district and the district engineer. That would bring us down to about 75,000. And then it's hard to say it's an ethical reduction or whatever it is, to recognize this is a very low income group of residents, and to expect them to pay 10,000, 5,000, or even 3,000 a person for a sewer connection. When you add that into all the other issues, street improvement, maintenance costs, it's just endless. So we're looking at trying to work with the county and the districts and MWSD to get fees down to what are more affordable and what would be less than, currently we're running $100,000 to $200,000 a resident just in fees, and that is it's unrealistic. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. We have someone else who wants to speak.
Yeah.
Jeffrey.
Yeah. Hi. This is Jeff. We understand. The calculations, and we know that you have certain restrictions, but of course, as Scott said, we like to waive it, but this is if that can't happen, maybe we can come to some other compromise with you, which would be good. We actually would like to defer a lot of these costs, which was our original intention, until when we can actually build the commercial. We can't build any commercial until the wellness center is built. The commercial at the wellness center that you see, that's all, every cent that comes in from rent to that, all of it goes to create affordable housing for adults with developmental disabilities. That money doesn't go anywhere else. That's owned by the nonprofit, just so you know. So if you can't do a waiver or a reduction, perhaps there's a way that we can wait until we get the commercial started in the future, and we can do an agreement and say, hey, we'll put the money up then. then the commercial projects, the for-profit project, can actually really pay the bulk of this in the future when we can build. So if you can't do a waiver, which we wish you would, we'd appreciate if you could consider that.
Thank you. Drew Bagdazaria.
And the other thing that we are doing is a significant expansion to the public utilities in the area. We're bringing this sewer main down about 995 feet, I believe, County Airport Boulevard. So we are injecting a significant amount of our capital into the public system. So it's a financially challenging project, as Scott and Jeff have mentioned, and we appreciate some consideration of all that.
Yeah, if possible, I wouldn't mind following up on what Drew just said.
All right,
Go ahead.
briefly.
Again, I'm not one to tell how a district is operated, but in my past experience, and also district managers in Pacifica, and when we kind of, and again, this isn't necessarily what you do, but we looked at the connection fees as a buy-in to the infrastructure of collecting and distributing sewage. And we would often waive fees for agencies, or developers that put in more to the system than what it would take to just connect a lateral. And what Drew was saying, it's almost 900 feet of connection distance, which is, somewhere between $140,000 and $190,000 worth of input just to connect to your system. And that in itself sometimes, and again, Pacifica wasn't unique. It's not untypical for districts to accept payment of a infrastructure extension in lieu of buying into that infrastructure, just cash, especially if they don't contribute to that. So that would be another way that we could have this looked at. So it's not so much as a waiver as just an investment in the system that is already being made by Big Wave.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this? Go back to you, Chuck.
Yeah, and so Jeff and Scott, to your point, yes, we've done a lot of deals with developers and whatnot, and they do add infrastructure to the system. In this case, the infrastructure you're adding is only serving, the Big Wave project, so it's not really applicable. And I think the board is sympathetic to, obviously what's being built here and whatnot. But at the end of the day, we base our decisions on wastewater generation, and you're generating 3,100 gallons a day of wastewater. And we don't really have, or the board really doesn't have this ability to waive fees, no matter how, deserving the project is. So we looked at that when we assessed the fees and the amount of EDUs. We took a careful look at it. And I think we did a really, really fair assessment on what wastewater would be generated from this project. So I understand your plight, and I'm sympathetic to it, and the board is sympathetic to it. But at the end of the day, we've got to assess what we do. And like you said, Scott, you were the district engineer at Pacifica, or the city engineer at Pacifica, and you went through this, a bunch of times, obviously. So you understand, I think, where we're coming from. So.
Yeah.
Do we have the legal ability to discount these fees? Could you speak to that, or Bill? Chuck?
Yeah. Bill, you want me to take that?
It's up to you, Chuck. I can answer it if you like.
Okay, why don't you answer it?
So, there is a stipulation and order for judgment in the case that we were involved with the Big Wave project, which reads as follows. GCSD's connection charges and assessments will be applied to Big Wave in a manner and amount consistent with or proportional to other projects. And I think, that's what GCSD has done here, is applied it both in amount consistent with and proportional with other projects. The other aspect of this is that a large chunk of this is related to our assessment district, which is to pay the bonds. And when you, the calculations and the forecasts for those bonds, really have to be, in other words, the fees charged to everyone has to be equitable. Otherwise, it upsets the rationale for why you impose the bonds in the first place. So I don't recommend that you can waive or should waive the assessment district charges. That leaves $65,000 in connection costs, and then you get into, where in the code can you give some latitude? And when you look at the code, it's very specific about connection charges and what will be charged. And in fact, the code even speaks with 2/3 voting requirement to change connection charges. But I think the more important part here is, what the applicants are asking for is a waiver from the connection charges. And I look to the waiver provisions of our code and that apply to the code generally. And there are certain findings that have to be made. And the question then becomes whether the board can even make those findings. And there are 4 different findings involved there. I'm happy to go through them if you like, but I think they're probably very difficult to make in this circumstance. And then lastly, I just think that, this causes potential problems with the way GCSD imposes its fees and charges. So, but again, if you want to discuss further the necessary findings, I'm happy to do that, but I'm not recommending that you waive these charges.
Yeah. So I was on mute. Yeah, but my point would be that that we keep it on the table, especially they're asking for delay. There is obviously, your first point, the legal framework. We have to be fair and equitable with everybody across the board. That's not going to affect anything. The point is, you see with low income housing, tax credit agencies across the board, when there's projects like this, and that's what's, I was reading an article. You look at the local families that are involved in this. This is like the original disabled local community that has just been like praying for this for it's amazing to even see that and so you look at it, it's like, this is real. This isn't, this is as real as it gets. If there ever is going to be a credit for a project, maybe GCSD doesn't consider that, but most government agencies consider. That's the whole point of why it is good. We could incentivize the what we want to see in our community by giving credits, whatever that is, whether that's this, we've talked in the past about capacity for houses and incentivizing it. Same thing with the development. This is a need that is desperate. And so it's like, I would say at least we should keep it on the table to consider if they're asking for delayed payment for, until the project can get done, given the nature of this, that this has been up in there for so long. I think that you need to consider this, because this is, to me, this is as real as it gets in terms of you could look up line by line the families that are going into this, and it's like, this is our local community right here. So I would say that I don't see the strong that I guess GCSD is never going to consider any type of consideration. Most government agencies, though, they at least want to be open to that. They at least want to say, listen, in some cases, we will consider, given the merits of a project, if we could scrutinize really the underlying who's benefiting from this and what we want to see. I would say we at least got to consider that, because if we say no to this, that means we say no to everything ever, environmental, anything that has some good merits. Then we have set it. So I think that we want to maintain that precedent, at least let's consider and leave it open to consider the merits of this and what, even like I said, if it's a delayed payment because of the uncertainty of it, I would say that that would be the right move, just from the right thing to do. To
And,
consider.
and David, you're right. There are a lot of government agencies that do consider that, but they're generally agencies like the county that have land use planning issues, and that's not who we are. We're a sewer district. We're trying to measure wastewater generation and that kind of stuff. So we also have to remember that yes, this has developmentally disabled housing for it, but it's also a large commercial component. So this is phase one of 7 phases. There's a lot of warehouse space, a lot of office leasing, and that kind of stuff. And I'll give some brief background. When I got here 15 years ago, the accusation to GCSD was we're acting like a planning agency. And I've spent 15 years trying to make us not act like a planning agency, make us like a sewer district. And I think that's where we are, and that's what we're measuring right here.
And my response would be, you seem to know it intimately, what a responsible government agency would do in that case, and say, perfect, this plot that you just charted out and is going to be treated as we treat everything. This part that is defined by go look at low income housing, look at everything, the tax credits around that you said it perfectly, that a part of the project is treated like everything. A part of the project, whether that's delayed fees, whatever it is, I'm saying as a board, we could at least consider. That doesn't mean anything. I'm just saying we could at least consider what the merits of that part of the project, whether that means even if it's not even giving them any reduction at all, but some type of deferral until there's official, because in some ways this and the people look at this like it might still never happen. So it's
well, again, and again, David, I mean, you talk about low income housing and things like that. That's not your board's purview. Your board's purview is sewer and wastewater generation. And I think that's how you have to look at it. So
absolutely. I'm just saying
And
that
we have to be fair to our residents.
Yeah. And I'm not even saying to make a motion I'm saying the consideration that, because that is a precedent. If you say no to this, then in terms of that's taking your stance, not even considering anything, then that, to me, I think it's better to keep as a board. It gives you more flexibility to say, yes, we will consider the merits in some cases of, we do have that authority in order to drive what the community ultimately wants. As a local community agency, that's what separates us from the county. We're able to deliver on that. And so I would say that gives us in the future, like I said, other environmental partnerships, things like that, but if that's the stance that you're taking, then in terms of the consideration of that, then
well, yeah, and
I would
recognize
say that it makes
I'm not,
sense to at least
I'm not
consider it.
taking a stance. What we're doing, I think, and what the board is tasked with is treating this project fairly as they would any other project. And that's what they're looking at right now. And fairly means looking at the wastewater generation of the project. We can't go into the good or bad of it. Obviously, everyone's in favor of it. So, yeah.
I had one additional.
I'm going into, no, we're, all right. Go ahead, Mr. Holmes, but then, we need to have board deliberation here. And
okay. I did want to understand Bill's position on waiving, and that was just brought up. But I think the hard engineering calculation was based on 75 gallons per capita per day. The average for the county right now is 65 gallons. This is essentially a cooperative with a central kitchen that's operating. We aren't running issues. And what was discussed was from an engineering standpoint, it's closer to 40 and we agreed on 44 with the district back in 2016. And the recent calculation, all of a sudden,
we didn't agree to 44 back in 2016.
Well, you guys agreed to what was in the secret document.
Yeah,
the secret document has 44 in it, and that was kind of based on.
That was your secret document, not the district's. So.
Yeah, it was a county's secret document, but the well, be that as it may, what Jeff was getting at was still possibly looking at how much flow we actually generate. And it's closer, again, if you looked at even apartment dwellers, it's going to be pushing 50, not 75. So we could argue facts, but I think one of the things that I'd be asking for is at least a more generous assessment of how much we're generating per person. And then the other part of it, if you look at what was proposed and in the CEQA document, we're roughly half the size of what that estimated flow was. We were looking at 3,000 gallons a minute for full development. We're 23 residents, 33 total. The full development was based on 54 residents and 70 total. So and again, we can't ask for generosity, but we can ask for a liberal assessment of the actual flows, which would be about 25% of what you're generating at 75 gallons a minute. So that's the other aspect of our argument is treat us like the flow we're generating versus the maximum flow we could generate. And back on Jeff's point, if it's waited till obviously rolling the fees, nobody in this group has 268,000 or 256 until we get a bank loan, and we can't get a bank loan until we get a building permit, and this is holding up the building permit obviously. But delaying the fees would be tremendously valuable, and then also maybe reassessing them after a year of full operation would also be a way to treat us fairly, like the rest of the district being treated. So that would be maybe 2 and 3 versus just waiving. One is considering the lower value.
Scott, I think key to that point is exactly what you just said. We are treating you fairly, and we're treating you like we would treat every other applicant in the district. So yeah, so I agree with that.
I wonder if other board members would like to weigh in here, and maybe before. It seems like there's a lot of issues out here that were not presented to us by the applicants in the staff report. I mean, in the application. I don't understand this CEQA thing. We have the lawsuit stipulation, which says that GCSD will determine appropriate fees based on the volume of wastewater GCSD reasonably anticipates will be generated by the project. And we had our engineer look at that. That seems reasonable to me. But I'm very sympathetic to what you guys are asking for and what you guys are doing. So let me ask some of the other board members to weigh in here, and perhaps, I don't know, anyone else want to weigh in? You need to unmute Matthew.
Yeah. I think what I heard our counsel say was that the contingent assessment and the non-contingent assessment are basically untouchable. There's a amazingly elaborate legal setup for those things, and we don't dare violate them. And so I'd like to address one point that Scott just made, and average flow is average flow. However, the system, collection, transmission, and treatment system has to be designed for anticipated maximum flow. And so, if there are big weekends of lots of people on the coast and they're generating wastewater, the plant and our collection and transmission systems have to be able to handle that. So it's just a fact of how these things work. And we had our professional engineer of many, many years of experience look at this, and that's the figure he came up with. So I don't know what, I don't know where the district, the board can go from that. And I think you mentioned that, isn't there included in here a permit ready to issue notice from the 1st of June, right? So that means that you can go and get your permit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
no, I don't know. As we understand it, I mean, if GCSD says, look, if they tell the county they can issue the permit, that's fine. But the county will not issue a permit until GCSD tells them it's okay. And is that we understood it, unless we pay you the 270,000, that you wouldn't allow the county to issue the permit. Now, if you could allow the county to issue the permit before we pay that money, if you can't give us a break on it, I understand. But that in itself will be helpful. And then we can consummate all the loans. We can get, we can just make it happen. It's just right now, before we have a building permit, spend 260. I'm not sure the exact amount. I think it's 265,000, which is per person is more than they make in a year and a half per person. It's just a lot of money right now. So maybe we could work something. Maybe you could work out something like that, and that will be helpful too. So whatever you could do, be creative to try to make this work for us, and that's one way to do it.
Well, I don't think that, Chuck, maybe you could address this. I don't think that's how it actually has ever worked, that we tell the county they can issue a permit. That's not how it works.
Well, and once again, what we're trying to do is treat you fairly, like was outlined in the stipulated judgment and whatnot. Of we're treating you like we treat everybody else because you're, putting wastewater into our system. And I like I said, I think the board is sympathetic to this, but the district doesn't do loans, if you will, for connection fees and things like that. As Matthew pointed out and Bill pointed out earlier, the assessment district's a whole different animal. $200,000 of those fees are pledges made to bondholders, and we can't break that pledge, obviously. So there's a lot of issues with that. I think the board has been, I won't say more than fair, they've been completely fair, and as has the district staff, in assessing the wastewater generation of this project.
Eric, do you want to say, do you want to weigh in here?
No, I mean, I think that the rest of the board has covered things pretty well. I just note that it sounds like the way we operate wouldn't allow any sort of deferred payment, but I would say that I get queasy pegging things to projects that may or may not happen. I mean, I certainly hope that the project happens in the future, but it's a very uncertain time, and pegging fees to some potential future event is I don't think prudent or wise at this juncture.
Anyone else from the public or Drew? Would you like to speak?
Just like to try and recharacterize the conclusion as I see it right now, and that is obviously we'd like a waiver or a reduction, but if that's not possible, then you could alert John Brennan at the county to allow the building permit to be issued, but a condition of occupancy would be payment of these fees. Now, we're not going to be discharging anything into the system clearly until occupancy. So it's not like we're burdening your system ahead of time. And not that this is a warning, but there is a chance that if costs cannot be controlled, this project doesn't get built. If this project doesn't get built, you all will never get that 256. That 995 linear feet of sewer extension won't get built. And there'll be a lot of families that continue to be underserved. Now, I'm not saying, we're not necessarily saying that it has to be this way. We're simply asking for a little creativity. The last thing I'd offer is, if you're worried about payment, we can talk about another bond, a payment and performance bond, or some kind of bond that guarantees payment of this fee. But right now, we just got to get a building permit to keep this thing rolling. So thank you for your consideration.
Yeah, and just to kind of sum her up, I mean, and that's where I feel like I need to speak, is that I feel like GCSD is kind of going to come out no matter what as the bad guy. If this never happens, it will be all because of GCSD holding things up and everything. If this does happen and there's a thriving disabled community, it's going to be all these great locals that are going to it's going to be world renowned. Like, how is this so amazing? and GCSD is going to be looked at like, what were you guys thinking? And so there is a history and all that. So I just say, I hope that not just we're being fair, but I hope with anything else they're requesting, communications, we're being beyond fair in everything. If obviously there's some misinformation in terms of requests we might need to do. I think if there's time is ever of the essence with anything, I think we should definitely be expediting that with any of those uncertainties. And I still think that as an agency, I think that we weaken ourselves as an agency by not having the power to ever reserve and consider the merits of a portion of a project that we want to associate with ourselves with, encourage, incentivize. And by striking that down, which this board is doing, and effectively through our manager and our lawyer saying, out of the question, we could never ever consider that, not even a possibility for a waiver, anything else on the table. And so if that is to me, that really weakens this board forever in terms of us never having an ability, according to our general manager and our legal counsel, to ever consider not, and we're not even talking about a reduction in payment, but waivers and deferrals, bond issues, especially when something's totally community funded. Like this is funded by your neighbor and their neighbor and 4 neighbors down. Like this is all locally funded as it gets. And to me, it's like if we're taking that away as a board, and the legal team and general manager saying no, it's not even possible. If that's really what you're saying, I think we came out tonight as a much weaker board than I thought we were. I thought as a local community board, that's the whole point why we existed. Otherwise, get rid of GCSD. There's no point. We could have one agency manage sanitary on the coast, or let the county come in. Come on, guys. The whole point of community agencies is to have a power to consider the merits of a community aspect. And if we're striking that down, I think that Bill, if that's the stance, I would like to talk to him. Maybe Jonathan would have a different opinion, because I would think that if you dig really deep, you might find somewhere in there that there is some possibility that for a portion of a project that we do as a board have the ability to consider some type of merits, that somewhere within there you could find something. And otherwise, if your stance is that there is no power, I think that's what I'm saying. This is an overarching issue. This is beyond big wave. To me, this as a board basically says GCSD is not a community. We have no power whatsoever at the local level to really kind of drive the things we want to see. Forget about it. We're just a pass-through entity that has its own cost centers and doesn't add any value, because you guys said it. I'm not saying that we have to do anything. You guys said as a board, as a legal team, as a general manager, that we have no power whatsoever to consider any community merits. So as far as I'm concerned, it's done as far as our powers and what we could do at the community level.
Okay. David, you have made that point. You have made your point. Okay.
And so in the end,
you are saying
down the road,
David,
yes, I'm speaking for the future. That's all I'm doing. When things happen, I don't want to be on the wrong side of history.
Make special deals that are not inconsistent with what our legal authorities are recommending. That's what you're saying. And I hear you. And I think you feel very strongly about this. And I understand where you're coming from. So,
but it does go beyond that in terms of the stance that this says to our board. It really does weaken our board. If someone's from the outside looking and saying, you as a board have no legal, your general manager just sat there, your legal team just sat there, and everyone said you guys have no power to consider the merits of a specific, not even the whole project, but one portion of it.
David, the general manager didn't say this. The legal team didn't say this. This is the government code. This is why we deal with people even-handedly. You want me to go to the flip side of that? Suppose a development project comes into your district and you don't want it. Well, then you're going to have the power to say, no, we're not going to build that development. We treat everybody the same,
absolutely,
fairly, and we judge wastewater generation, and I had our independent engineer go assess it. So we treat everybody fairly. This is not my opinion. It's not Bill's opinion. It's just what the government code, and it's what government should be about.
and that's what.
Want to
and
go
that's-
to that?
and that's
if we
and
make
that's
special David, can I just get some?
okay. Are you listen? What you guys are saying? I have not proposed. We're not talking about a special deal. We're talking about considering the merits of
we're talking
anything.
about a special
We're
deal that
considering the
other
merits.
residents of El Granada would
I'm
pay
saying
for.
that as a board, I don't like agreeing to anything. I think everyone should be open to anything. What I'm saying is, yeah, I would take the stance of the board. Yes, we do have the power to consider the merits, to incentivize whether we want to do with fee structures, anything else, what we want to see happen at all different levels. You guys are taking a different stance. So that's all I'm trying to say. And beyond that, yes, I am trying to say.
David, you have
I'm
said
trying
it
to-
well. We all hear what you're saying, David. We do. Your point is, your point is a valid one, and we understand what you're saying. So I think we need to get some other views. So
Anyway, the issue in front of
you
your
sum up,
board,
Chuck.
we've lost a little bit of sight of it, but the issue in front of your board is the issuance of a permit for the Big Wave Wellness Center. They've been assessed 14 ERUs, so if your board wants to consider that and someone wants to make a motion, I would recommend that someone make a motion to approve the issuance of the permit for 14 ERUs upon payment of all the associated fees.
I will make that motion.
Do I hear a
I'll
second?
second that.
Who seconded?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay,
David?
board discussion. I would like to say that I really feel a lot of sympathy for what you folks are doing. I myself have a nephew who is autistic and in full-time care, and he's in a small group home, and our whole family is grateful for the care that he gets and the way he's taken care of. I wish there was a way for us to do this that was appropriate and legal, but we've gone around and around. I've been consulting with our attorney and everyone else, and if we would be asked, voting to have the other residents of El Granada, without their consent, subsidizing this in a way that is not really consistent with the law in terms especially of our assessment district. So it's a really hard thing. And I understand the points David making, I really do. But, these are going to be people who will generate flow, and we're required by, and we made a legal agreement with you guys when the project was approved that we would make a good faith effort, and you would pay the fees based on charges on the volume of wastewater GCSD reasonably anticipates will be generated, and our engineer did that. So that's where I'm coming from, and I wish we had more flexibility on this, but I don't see that we do.
And if I could just say
The
one
board-
final thing.
No, David, let the rest of the board speak. You can have the last word.
Okay.
Okay, I'll let you speak last, as long as you don't go on too long. But do other members of the board want to speak to this?
I will say that David, at least one thing that you said is accurate. We are not here to judge the merits of this worthy project. It's a worthy project. However, that is not what a sanitary district gets to do, because we're not a planning agency. We don't have that authority to say, we're going to waive all our rules and get a loan from the rest of the people who pay into the district because this is a very worthy project. And if we ever did that, every project that came in after that would be very worthy.
And so.
Wait, Eric, do you want to speak to this? You don't have to. I'll give you a chance.
I mean, I think like, your position is very eloquently stated. It's hard to follow. I mean, I think we're all sympathetic, but I think we have to, for good or for ill, we have to follow the rules that are set out, and we have to serve the entire community. And part of that is not putting the burden of the special, in particular the special assessment, onto others. I mean, it needs to be equitable, it needs to be fair, and you know, I wish there was more we could do, but given the reality of what we can do, it's just unfortunate, but it's what we have to work with.
Barbara, I'm way out of line asking, but could I ask for a legal clarification from Bill in terms of if the fee is deferred till occupancy, that's deferred. We're not using the system or contributing, and you as a board still have the right to hold up occupancy. But if it's done as a condition of occupancy, even at the 268 or 256, it allows us to get bank financing, and with a they won't give us financing without a permit. We don't have this kind of cash available without bank financing. So is it within the realm of the district to comply with the assessments to not assess us until we actually connect and start using it, which would be a condition of occupancy? You have all the authority to hold up the project and keep us from occupying it until we pay. But that at least puts us in a position to financially survive through the permit process. Is that within the realm of the assessment legality, Bill, in your opinion?
Barbara, would you like me to answer that?
So yes.
So section 701 of the code says, no connection shall be made to any public sewer, any sewer flowing into a public sewer within the district until there shall be paid to the district a sewer connection charge based upon the estimated volume of wastewater discharge from the premises to be connected. So it presupposes that the charge is paid prior to connection. And that's what the code says. So you'd still be dealing
We aren't going to connect for over a year, by the way. So that's the thing I'm asking. We aren't actually connecting to the sewer line. The building won't connect until probably December of 2021. So would that still legally, because that would really help us.
So
and I think that would meet that description you just read.
Right, make it a condition of occupancy.
Well, I don't think
we don't connect the building until it's built, which is 2 years down the road.
So
well, again, this isn't a legal answer, but you're asking for special consideration, and we understand that. And you know what happens? We issue the permit. You guys go get occupancy. We don't have any control over that because that's a county certificate of occupancy, and you don't pay. I wouldn't recommend this to the board to do it for a developer, which is in essence what you all are. And so, you know, I don't know that we can recommend it for this.
no, I would not recommend it in terms of relying on the county's certificate of occupancy.
Okay,
The same kind of pressure could be put then to say, well, we expect to generate revenue. I mean, we have, at that point, we wouldn't be able to hold up a certificate of occupancy.
You can, the county will let you.
No,
let you.
Okay, I'm going to call on Delia because she's raising her hand here.
that's me.
Delia, you're muted.
Can you unmute? Unmute.
Delia, you're
Delia,
muted.
unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay. The way the process works, and this kind of goes back to Matthew's question, but it also will answer the question about the certificate of occupancy. Our process runs with the county process. So when they get planning approval, they can apply. When they get building approval, and that's what the pickup notice is for. The county issues that pickup notice that I provided in the packet, and then that allows the applicant to come in. They usually will pay all of their fees. I issue them a physical permit, and then they have that permit to take to the county to get secure and pick up their building permit. Then what happens is once they start building the project, they have to call us for a final inspection of the connection to the sewer line. Now, in this particular case, they have to build a sewer line to connect to. So that is still pending. We already issued a permit for it. However, they are taking a lot of the line out of the public right away and they're putting it on the private property side. And we do need the engineer certified plans for that. Our engineer kind of agreed to the idea, but we don't have the final plans. But so we have issued a permit for the line, the main line to serve the project. But generally the county will not issue a certificate of occupancy until we give the sewer sign off, which means that we have been called for the final inspection and we've signed off on that inspection that they've passed it. And I've maybe had one time in the 20 years I've been here where they've goofed and issued the certificate of occupancy before I did the sign off. And in that case, they actually immediately went in and revoked it and waited for us to sign off. So they do get a final sign off from us, just so you know. That's how the process works.
And John Brennan, who's looking for some kind of email correspondence, you could simply say as a condition of final approval, GCSD sign off that payment had been made on fees, and that would be placed on the building permit. It would be very clear to everybody.
Mhm.
So there are.
Chuck, is that an option? Chuck, is that an option?
I guess everything's an option, but if you want to grant them special consideration, you'll be granting them special consideration.
Well, and I also want to add, you're going to have to make waiver findings as well. And so again, we get back to the question of whether we can even make the findings and those 4 findings that I did in detail for you. But we'd have to come back with findings for you to consider. You know, again, because the code envisions that the fees are paid before any physical connection is made.
And remember also the code that Bill quoted was the district code. And Bill, you haven't looked at the assessment district documents, the certificate issuance and whatnot. So. At the end of the day, if we want to go to a broader political discussion here, let's assume the board is a different board makeup. It's 3 developer-friendly people on the board. And some guy comes in and says, hey, I've got this great development. I don't want to pay the fees. Let me kick it down the road for a couple of years. And they do that, you'd all be up in arms, I think. And that's just the path you're going down. And you can obviously do it. And there's a fairness in this kind of stuff. We treat everybody fairly. We treat everybody equally. That's what we're trying to.
I don't feel as if I really understand this deferral question adequately. So, Mr. Peck, would you like
Yeah, just, I mean, I understand, but the thing is, as Drew brought up earlier, and it's what we did with every other off-site or on-site improvement we had to make, we provided a bond. So if you're concerned that we could take occupancy before we paid you for something we're not even going to hook up for a year and a half, I mean, we'll give you a payment performance bond and we will pay you that money. And that's fine. Then you have something guaranteed. You won't have to worry about lien rights. You won't have to worry about fighting with the county about occupancy, and you should be you should be secure at that point.
This is a new idea. Is this an option? Chuck, do you know? Can you speak to this, or Bill?
I can speak anecdotally to it with construction performance bonds. Good luck calling them. It doesn't work quite as easily as Jeff's talking about, but
No, I
Is that what
agree.
they're for?
I'm sorry.
That's what they're for, right? But they don't work.
They've always worked for me. I've been a contractor 44 years. They've always worked.
Okay.
Well, what's the pleasure of the board? I feel as if this I don't feel that based on the legal analysis and information we have, and particularly the stipulation that we made with Big Wave when it was approved, that we can waive these fees. But I mean, we can modify these fees without setting a precedent and so forth. But I'm feeling that perhaps we should consider coming back with a look at this waiver. 'Cause I'm,
And I would agree with that, just in a sense. I feel like it's been a good conversation. There's been a lot of uncertainties that maybe we could, kind of tie up. I think at the end of the day, I never said anything about what we need to agree to. I think as an agency, we can give, considering circumstances, we could give an olive branch. And that's all. At the end of the day, I think there could be an opportunity to say, let's look at this in a month and say, because to me, the real part of it is, we do got to make sure that we are on the right side of this down the road, and that we are being expedient in every, response, and anything else that, that's where I would like to see where revisit it in a month when we have more information, and see, look more into what, because I think there is one, it's a project where I think everyone looks at it like, will it even ever happen still? And so you can't blame somebody for thinking, hey, and that's where I say, even can we do it where it's a portion, not for the normal development part, but for the developmentally disabled part,
that's all we're
shows the
looking at tonight
percentages.
is that part.
Yeah, but either way, I think my comment be say I would second what Barbara said, if we could revisit this in a month or so and just have more information and then make a final decision. Just because I think as a board, it does give us power to say, hey, we do have at any given time, we hold that authority to be able to make local communities decisions. And we're not saying we are not going to do that, but we do have that authority to do that. And so I would like to say, and that's at least in a month, revisit that, and then we can make a final decision on that once we have more information.
I would like, if this is even an option, I would like a bulletproof guarantee that these funds would get paid. I was environmental project manager for a big development project, and I'll tell you, with good reason, everybody wants their fees paid when they're supposed to be paid, because otherwise, there's a certain way that things work. You have to pay the fees when they pay. But I guess at this point, I'd be willing to, we have to wait a month on this, but to look at whether we could come up with a bulletproof C of O condition that would require the payment of fees. And I also want to know, would we be setting a precedent that would then allow other developers potentially to, are we setting a precedent for something that we really is not like the efficient and proper way to run what we're doing? It's very simple what we're doing. We're making sure that everybody in this community pays a fair price for their sewer service. And that's our job, is to make sure that continues to happen. So I would want to make sure that we wouldn't be setting a precedent. And I don't know that we have those answers tonight, do we? Can we come up with a bulletproof way that would require the payment of those fees? And would it set a precedent that could potentially be applied for a development project that was coming in the future?
Well, I guess the simplistic answer is, are you setting a precedent? Yes. You'll be treating them differently than other people. So,
and my response to that,
and would we have to treat other people the same way in the future?
And is there a bulletproof way to collect the fees? No.
and my response to that would be, Warren Buffett said, anytime you're considering situations, think how your local newspaper would write about a challenging situation. Sometimes things take a little bit of courage. I think if the local paper dug deep, they would say, you know what, this is a situation where this is probably, they're doing this on the merits of this. I don't think that there's some really shady inner workings that's going on here. This seems to be a good community funded projects. Yeah, absolutely. There will be situations where people come across and it is hard to decipher. You will never know. I think the data is out there that this is community funded. These are real community people. These families have been here for years. The people funding this, when you see these campaigns, these are our local people that are writing the checks. I think that if we look at how the paper would write about this versus other situations, which might be more challenging, but it doesn't matter. As a board, I still think we want the ability to grant variances, consider, we want that ability. If not, then we are a weaker agency without that. So I think that alone
I do
tells me
not-
that
I am not really strongly in favor of the ability to make special deals for certain people than other people. And I'm not going to make I'm going to make my decisions based on what I think is right and based on the law, rather than what's popular. I mean, sometimes you have to just do something hard, but I also, in this case, don't.
But don't you think we do need more information? You could say that, right? You brought that up. I agree with that. And I would say this has been a good enough conversation. Maybe we do, maybe we do need to get on and revisit this in a month so that all of us could kind of come back with a little reset on exactly, because there has been a lot of uncertainties that, and then we could get these clarifications, because that's all I'm saying at the end of the day. I am looking at the future and saying whatever, we should be beyond fair in terms of everything. So hopefully we are being extremely expedient, that there is no whatsoever uncertainties that
I hear
any
you. Yes,
delays or
I hear you,
anything.
David.
Yeah, and beyond that, I'm saying,
Can I ask-
I'm putting out there that
David,
an olive
you know
branch,
where
that's all I'm asking.
Okay, thanks, David. What do Eric and Matthew? Where do you want to go with this?
I mean, if we want to get some more information and talk again in September, I don't object to that. I mean, I think my personal and professional experience kind of mirrors Chuck's. I mean, this will set a precedent. It may be a innocuous precedent, or it may not. It depends on what projects come up in the future, and it depends on who is on the board of directors in the future. And the way to guarantee payment is to get payment up front. Anything else will have some level of risk for this board. And if we want to set a precedent and go that route, we'll have to be comfortable with that risk.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
Oh, we have Barbara, so we don't forget, we have a motion on the table to approve the permit upon payment of the fees. It was moved by Matthew, seconded by
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, good. Well, let's just have a
30
vote.
minutes ago.
Yes. Is there a second to that motion?
No,
I
David
that,
seconded it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is there?
I'm sorry, Chuck, could you repeat the motion one more time? I think I know.
The motion was to approve the permit for the Big Wave Wellness Project upon payment of the connection
As currently.
as put forth in the agenda packet there.
Thank you.
All right.
And I would just say that if I can make a motion to move this to the next meeting, and then we'll make a final decision, I think, in terms of.
We need to vote on.
I don't know.
First.
I don't know if
David,
that piece needs to be.
Motion.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is that okay?
Yeah, we got to vote on the motion, David, on the table. So.
Yeah.
Withdraw it.
All right. I guess call the question. Chuck, do you want to call for a vote?
Okay. We'll do a roll call vote.
Yes.
Director Seaton?
Yes.
No, you don't mean to vote yes. You want to vote no, David.
That's where I was saying that there's within the piece of it, there's the prove it, and then the language.
This is a motion to require payment right away.
Okay. Yeah.
David, let me read the motion again. The motion was to approve the permit upon payment of the necessary connection fees, as outlined in the agenda packet.
Okay.
So, David, your vote is?
And okay, my vote is yes. But what I'm saying is that I would like to delay this until the next meeting. That's that was I thought we were in agreement on that.
That'll have to be a second motion.
Okay, then I'll abstain then from this vote.
So yes or abstain?
I'll abstain.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Director Clark.
You're muted.
Matthew, you're muted.
Aye.
Okay, Director Sukamel.
I vote aye.
All right, Director Dye.
I really think this is the right thing to do for the residents of our community and the people who are part of this district. I'm sorry, you guys, but I vote yes. I understand.
Okay.
the burden.
So there's 3 yeses, 1 abstention by Director Seaton, so the motion passes.
Sorry. I hope you can figure out a way to make this work. Should we take a 2-minute break?
What happened where we were talking about delaying it and Barbara said there wasn't enough information, uncertainties, and then
We voted, David, not to delay it. That's why I didn't want you to vote yes, because I wanted to be sure that you were voting what you believed.
well,
So
there's
this motion
multiple.
If your motion had failed, then you could have made a motion.
Okay, either way, I'm saying that my point was to bring this at the next meeting when we meet.
Understand, but there is a 3-to-1 vote on this
Okay.
to approve this. Let's take a brief 2-minute break.
Okay.
Off.
Which is that we have 2 situations now where we need to choose a consultant to work for our district. We are going to choose an architect to take a look at the fire station to give us some feedback, and also to get someone to do we agreed to do a biological assessment on the Burnham Park property. My thinking was that in both cases, although the initial project is relatively small and we will not be committed to that person, it makes sense to take some time because we may well want to stay with that person for going forward. And I thought it might be useful to have a brief board discussion of how we go about making these decisions. It could be, it could be a staff level decision, it could be a full board discussion and a review. Or we could have appoint a subcommittee. Well, I guess it's a committee of the board to handle it. We could appoint a committee that would handle all of this kind of decision, or we could, on a case-by-case basis, appoint a special committee of 2 to do some interviews and make a recommendation to the board. So I thought it would be helpful, and this was something that's going to impact what happens for us in the future on all of our projects, that would be helpful to have a discussion on this. So does anyone have any thoughts, or Chuck, did you want to add anything to that introduction about choosing consultants? Uh-oh, you're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I know. I said I was away a little bit there. It took me a little longer than the rest of you.
I just explained very briefly about why I wanted to have a discussion about how we go about choosing consultants. From letting staff do it to making it a board meeting decision. And I think after discussing with a lot of people, I inclined to the idea of setting up a board committee to do interviews and make a recommendation to the board, but I wanted to see what others thought about what the appropriate process was.
Yeah, and that makes the process a little bit more nimble. It's not like we're hiring a firm to do a $500,000 treatment plant design or something like that. So I think for some of these smaller projects like $5,000, $10,000 biological assessments and, other things we might do, I think having the committee just makes it more nimble and quicker. And, we were talking about the architect, you don't want to come to the board with 3 resumes and credentials and have the board pick. You want to talk to the people first and then have the committee make the recommendation. And that's kind of what we do with our other district down here, is we have a committee that's an engineering committee sometimes, and this one's a Parks and Recs committee, and does those interviews and kind of paves the way for it. So.
But in both cases, they could actually develop into much more extensive projects.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah, so that's one reason I want to make sure that we take, we go through a thorough process of selecting the right person. What do other board members think about this?
I guess I have a question is, do we have any specific rules as a district that we have to follow for procurement for these sorts of things? Do we need to send everything out for bid, or certain high dollar projects only?
125, right?
No, so if you're doing consulting services, you pick based on the consultant's qualifications. If you're actually bidding a project, like a construction project, anything over $25,000 is, you have to go out for public bid. So this is different than that.
Okay.
And as I said to Barbara, what happens with this stuff, Eric, is the committee does the initial screening, if you will. But at the end of the day, if you're letting a contract and an agreement with somebody, it comes to the board for your final approval.
Okay, and so if we're happy with the performance of someone on, say, a $10,000 task, there's no issues with us sole sourcing that to them for a larger task from a consulting perspective, not necessarily a construction perspective.
And Bill, jump in, but we haven't had an issue. It's actually you are required in the district world to pick your consultant based on qualifications, not price. It's kind of weird.
Oh,
one
that's magic.
has to be completely qualifications almost.
Yeah,
and the other is completely priced. And
I want all my clients to do that.
Right.
That's how we chose K&K too. I actually brought 3 potential consultants, and we chose one, and then we continued to give them more and more and more things to do.
Right, and you're not allowed to. You can consider price as a component of picking a consultant, but it can't be the only qualification.
Okay, I guess my feeling is, I think it makes sense. I think you're right, Chuck. I mean, if we want to try and move quickly and aggressively on these things, I would say, yeah, let's get a committee together and do the legwork to make the recommendations so that we can move all this forward.
Bill, is that okay?
Eric, could you repeat exactly what you were said there?
Oh, it seems to me that given we want to try to be nimble on this stuff, setting up a board committee, I guess it's number 3 on Barbara's memo to do the reviews and make a recommendation for these various services seems like the best path forward.
I don't, if that's the board's pleasure, I don't see a problem with that. It just, and I'd be interested in Chuck's feelings about that, but I don't see any particular problem with that if the board does want to create a subcommittee to look at that, as long as it's a subcommittee, not more than 2.
Yeah, and I think that's the way to move forward. Keeps things moving. So,
Nancy, do you want to speak to that? You're muted.
Thanks. I'm just thinking back when you first started working with K&K, and just for the PACS advisory role, we can operate like we're operating, but I think with K&K, you included 1 or 2 PAC members in your review. And I would just want to offer up, it's the sort of thing I think PAC members would value. And there have been a couple other things, maybe the survey is the one that I'm thinking of, where it was 2 board members, but also 1 or 2 PAC members. to work through some things. So it's a way for the PAC to play their advisory role. Of course, they don't get votes and don't get to make the decision in those things, but they can bring their perspective to advise. And I think that they value the opportunity to do that.
Makes sense. Matthew?
I agree with you and Chuck, and actually with what Nancy just said as well. Based on the number of responses, initial responses that I saw about the bio report, we would either have to have a special meeting or a 9-hour meeting, interview and ask questions of all those different firms. And that is totally unwieldy. And I think, this could even be turn into, the committee could come back and say, we have 2 firms here that we have narrowed it down to. We think they're both qualified. We think that they should both be considered. And then the board maybe will want to decide. But yeah, I think a committee is really the way to go.
All right, well, that sounds like a good consensus. Bill?
So the only caveat I have is that, subcommittees of the board are not Brown Act committees, right? If it's an ad hoc committee, right? So, but once the committee consists of other members, it's then a Brown Act committee. So you can do it. I just want to give you that thought.
What about, because I feel like there's still, before the final scope, when we know who the best fit is in terms of qualifications, there's still things being worked out. Whereas I think it could be a good point where the committee could maybe recommend like 10 companies or something to get us in the ballpark of, here's some companies that fit. Here's where we think they'd be a good fit. Here's where some weaknesses maybe. You guys decide, and then we as a board could talk to 2 or 3 of them or whatever in terms of narrowing that down. Because I still feel like it's a little bit early to start saying, oh, give us, pricing, all this. Yeah, getting emails, doing some vetting, doing things like that is a good time for that. But I feel like we're kind of jumping the gun on certain things where I think it's more about lining it up and doing that. And then once we get these, the final scope kind of dialed in, then we'll be ready. Otherwise, so I don't know if that's a possibility to kind of have the Parks Committee do, kind of a project, and then we could take that project of those, a potential, and then, make a decision from there.
Well, I don't think we're talking about major. Right now, we're just talking about 2 small projects, but these are people we may want to consider with. Nancy, you do this?
Just a quick question, follow up on Bill's comment. If there's a subcommittee of the board with 2 members and we add a PAC member or someone else to it, are you saying that becomes a Brown Act committee?
Yeah, that's right, Nancy.
Okay.
Yeah, again, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means it has to be noticed.
All right, well, I think we'd like it to be more nimble than that, shall we?
That makes it not nimble. So under those conditions, I would say call a PAC member if you have a question.
Well,
What if we set up a committee with 1 board member and 1 PAC committee member, potentially?
So remember, it's an ad hoc committee of the board.
Okay.
Right? So if it were an ad hoc committee of the PAC, that's an advisory body, that would work too. But it would have to be an ad hoc committee of the body only.
Okay.
Thanks for that clarification.
All right. Well, I think I hear consensus that we're doing that. We're a 2-person committee. It's my sense that maybe we should see what kind of volunteers we have to look to handle the 2 things that we have on our plate right now, both of which are really small projects. But again, I think it's valuable to take some care, not that we wouldn't anyway, but to take a little extra time in the selection, because it is possible that that person would continue to do a much larger project for us in the future. So shall we look to see, I mean, do we have volunteers who would like to serve on two separate two-person committees to do interviews? I know I would like at least to serve on the architect one. Yes, Claudia?
I served on the Architecture Review Board for 18 years in the town of Woodside. And I chaired that committee for a number of those years. And so I would be more than happy to work with you on the architectural selection.
She would essentially be staff to the committee, so that's not a problem, right, Bill?
Correct.
You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, that's correct. A staff person can be present.
That would be very helpful, Claudia. Great.
Good.
So, starting with that one, is there anyone else who would like to be on to talk to the architects? Matthew.
Oh, the architect?
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna try to do these simultaneously?
Like both of them, yes, I think we haven't gone out with the RFP for the biological assessment, but we need to get that out so we get it back. And the architect, there's, you can maybe give a report on your conversation, but you know, I think it's good to be kind of ahead of the curve on the fire station. So you could be on both. Let's see.
I'd volunteer for the bio one. And
It'd be really valuable there because I know
David, what you were saying about the scope, these biological environmental assessment firms generally know just what they're doing, and they will understand the scope immediately. So there won't need to be much discussion.
Yeah, they don't make money unless they nail.
Yeah. My point is, I feel like we're in the stages because we're not dialed in, that we're not ready to, even if we found the perfect fit right now, we're not ready to say you're hired. So it's
we're ready to say they're hired.
The way to do things is to do a reach out and a vetting. Hey, we're looking, here's a good list. You put together a target list and we'll move through it. I think that
David, we have
still,
lists
I
for
think
both.
and that's my only point. So other than that, that was, you know, I'm responding to what you're saying. I feel like that's the stage that we're at. I would like to see a list of like, you know, 6+ potential things that we can narrow down, something very simple like that. But if you guys feel like you're ready to go out, then that's
that list would go to the whole board.
Yeah.
That list
No, I think the list would go to the committee.
Well, then who narrows down the first list? I know we have more than 6 on the bio list already.
The committee would.
No, and guys, we're overthinking this one a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank
We're
you.
just doing the biological.
These
We're
are
not
not
doing the
complicated.
design of the park or the entire sequa of it. We're just figuring out what's riparian, what's not, where can we build, where we can't. So I think this one's a simpler one, Dave. To your point, it's not the broader issue.
Yeah.
And then when we get bigger stuff, like I said, if we're designing a treatment plant, yeah, we go out big, we go to a lot of people. This one's more, so this is the nimble part we want.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out that a committee that narrows it down to 6 choices for the board to deal with defeats the purpose.
No.
You know, I don't know. I think once again, it's a chance for a committee to really put some thought into. Maybe there is a local connection, that somebody that would go above and beyond, like deliver so much value and would probably do it for free, you know, if they between us. And that's where I feel like we don't have time for that. The committee, that's why we have committees. They might actually spend the time and find that person that's like, you know what, this is, you know, and that's all I'm saying. That's why we have committees. I think it's a good fit. And
who would like to serve on the bio committee to choose the biological consultant just for this first project with Matthew? Nobody else? I'll do it.
I mean, I'm happy to serve. I don't have a strong. I don't know that I want to serve on both, but
I think you'd be great on the bio committee.
I'm happy to work with Matthew on the bio committee.
Does anyone have any objection to Eric and Matthew to follow up on we have a long list of options from K&K and from several other sources. So I think they can take it and run with it. For the architect, Anybody want to serve on that committee?
I'm open to it.
Okay, I think we have a list right now of 3 who have expressed interest, and we may have a couple more, including one very local. So we will look for more. If anyone has any suggestions for architect possibilities, again, just for this very first task, Nancy provided us with a good option. I found there's a local woman architect based in Granada, and we also have another person who's interested. So we will put that together. Does anyone have objection to those committees? Okay, moving on. Thank you very much. Consideration, Parks Committee report from Claudia? Or Parks function report from Claudia?
Yeah. My goodness, that first agenda item certainly kind of wrung me out. Anyway, I'd like to give just a general report on what's been happening over the summer. I had 3 different workshops for children, and we held them outdoors, and they were limited to no more than 8 children, ages 7 to 12. And we held them in the Surfer West Park, which was we were permitted to do that. And we use those 2 picnic tables that are in the park in the mornings from 10 to 12. Each of the workshops was 4 days long. And I plan on having more workshops, similar workshops in September and October, and offering them to our residents. You know, the parents were extremely thrilled with what we were doing. You know, the kids have been absolutely bored out of their minds, but they have been building bubbles of cohorts, and throughout the summer, throughout the pandemic rather. And so that's what we got. We've got bubbles of kids and parents that have been working together, and those are the ones we're going to continue with. The benefits of these small local classes are multifold. The enhancement of small motor skill dexterity, spatial reasoning abilities, and basically just the joy of being outside and learning new skills. The second thing on my list was the invasive white garden snail abatement. San Mateo County's Agricultural Department Representative John Sorfleet discovered the invasive white garden snail on our property, along with a major infestation along the west side of Highway 1 as well. So RCD's Cleo Turdy, Barbara and I met with him on the site, and we came up with an abatement plan. And we've accomplished the plan. We've got 3 buried traps. We have the entire site mowed and the area weed whacked. I'll hold up the photos that Cleo sent. We've got 3 of these. Traps, along with a couple of signs warning the people that this is an infestation, and it can cause serious illness because of parasites that these guys carry. And then we put 4 of these, see that, of these stake traps out in the field. And they will climb up the stake, and then they can't get down, and then they die. So anyway, I have volunteered to go out and clean these stakes and the traps and make sure that I was out there today, and I harvested 8 snails that were not in traps. So, you know, we've done a great job, and along with RCD, in really abating the issue. And Barbara, do you want to make comment on those wonderful little white snails?
No, I spent a lot of time wearing a glove and picking off snails, and our problem is that there's an infestation now in the Caltrans right away on our property, and there's a huge infestation on the other side. So I actually sent some photos to the ag department, and hopefully they can get Caltrans to deal with their issue. These are pretty nasty. Evidently they could, this sickness can really hurt dogs.
Yeah.
Barbara, when you say
they would get it from the snails, but even so, it's a really bad thing. So anyway, moving on.
I have a question. When you say other side, do you mean on the Caltrans property on the west side?
Yes. On the west side is a very bad infestation. On our side, there's maybe a dozen.
Do they think that's from the cars parked on the road?
Yes. They think it's from cars.
Yeah.
And picking snails off of our traps.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia.
Yeah.
When do we know that eradication has been achieved, and how long does that take?
Well, I'll keep on cleaning out the traps, and when we get zero in the traps, RCD was estimating we'd be doing this for a couple, 3 months.
I mean, the first time we went out there, I picked off probably 50 or 60. The second time I picked off probably 15. The next time it was like 8. And most times it's been fewer than 10. So, but then the other day I was there and there were a whole bunch of little tiny ones. I mean, they're really small anyway. So
Are they in the willows too?
They do go in the willows, but not as much.
I found the 8 I found today were in the willows.
Yeah, I think they're going there because the rest of the stuff is gone. They like.
Yeah. So anyway, that's our abatement plan, and RCD is trying to connect with Caltrans to see if they won't do something on their property. But with these fires going on, the chances of them doing anything in the short term is very slim. The other thing I wanted to mention was the Burnham Park postcard development. Marty Souter and we and K&K developed the graphic, and we had 2,500 of the postcards printed in English format, English language, large format. They were mailed in early July, as you all know. And David put up a realtor's box for us on the sign, on the big billboard sign. And so I'm putting 25 every week in there and keeping a count to see how many are taken. We're also printing 500 in the Spanish language, and the various agencies around town are taking portions of those and handing them out. So, I don't think, none of us really know how big our Latin community is. And I think this may be a way of getting them more connected to what we're doing in the park. At any rate, that's the hope. The big billboard went up very, very easily.
Call it a billboard, the big sign.
The big sign, the billboard. Well, Tim Pond, who was the construction manager for the El Granada fire station, actually volunteered his time and the material. He rebuilt the sign because our graphic was bigger than the one they had for the for the fire station. He rebuilt it, put it in place, and when the graphic itself was available, he affixed it to the frame. And that was all as just as his gift to us.
Very
so
nice.
I sent him a thank you letter from GCSD, and he's really a great guy. I was to do that for us. So we've got everything up that we had tried to do that was on the list from last meeting. Billboard up, postcards out.
Great.
Yeah,
All right.
that's
I would
it.
like to just say that I think Nancy can tell us how many responses, but I would just like to comment that Nancy has done an excellent job of responding to all of the comments. She's really tactful and very good at responding to the comments people have made. So I think we're very fortunate that we have Nancy managing that whole part of what we're doing. Nancy, did you want to speak to that?
Making friends for the park. Just wanted to say from the first next door post, we got about 20 responses. After the postcard went out in the mail, I've gotten about 40, I think, that were generated by the postcard, and we've gotten about 10 more since the sign went up. So when I sent the PDF out a few weeks ago, just after we reached 50, I think there were 53 comments on that. We're now up to 70. So it's going fairly slow, but now the sign is up and it has the take-home cards. Hopefully we'll get some more from our in-person events. 70 is about as good as it's gotten. So they're generally quite positive. And I had another one just yesterday from some folks who came to the workshop have sent in comments, and it's nice that they tend to feel like what they said and in input at the workshop is showing up in the plans. There were only 2 or 3 out of the 70 that said do nothing or do less. The wishes have been fairly simple things that we have considered. Outdoor showers, a fenced dog area, and there's a letter writing campaign this week that generated about 5 comments for people who'd like us to leave the name open and let the community weigh in on or vote on a selection of names. It was started by a member of the H&B Historical Society who wanted more of a nod to history. The concerns generally are around parking and whether there's enough. And I think when the lot was closed and the parking pushed up into the neighborhoods, particularly on the post office or up around the apartments and really squeezed out their parking, people are more sensitive than they were a year ago about parking and making sure there's enough parking for the park and the beach. A lot of people who assume that we're going to be providing parking for the beach. The traffic flows through El Granada and a few concerns that the park would attract even more traffic flow through El Granada. And the usual as we expect, lots of comments about the unsafe highway crossing and what we can do about that. So I have given out the link to connect the coast side to a number of folks, but mainly I try, if they have a question, to answer their question. But I think it's important, the communication is telling them things and outreach is letting them tell stuff back, but to get to engagement, I think the back and forth and dialogue is important. So there's a few of those where we've had a few emails back and forth that are friendly, and I think just help us build some relationship with the community. A number of positive comments about our continued outreach and multiple waves of outreach that are positive. So we'll keep collecting. Our plan from the PAC is that we have set a meeting for about 10 days before your special meeting. So we'll meet on September 14th. So around the 10th, I'll try to summarize how many mentions there were of various things to take to the PAC. And the PAC will develop a group perspective on recommendations to the board, just as we did after the workshop and after the survey for your special meeting. That's it.
Claudia, anything else? Anything else, Claudia?
Oh, no, I think that's it.
Great. All right. Thank you.
And I was just going to add that I think that when I look at that, Nancy did a good summary of kind of distilling it down. And that's kind of how I look at it. We could do all these cutesy little things and, all these decisions. At the end of the day, the 2 biggest overarching community-driven decisions are kind of the crosswalk and how do we improve traffic rather than this making traffic worse. And I know those are difficult questions, but I feel like those are, at the end of the day, I know either way, I'm just throwing it out there that I do think that those are very important community issues. I know it's outside of our control. There's only so much we can do. But to me, those are the two key things. The third one with that is the parking, obviously. Outside that, everything else is going to fall into place. I feel like it's those two that you brought up that is an interesting data point with your summary, because I do feel like those are big issues that ultimately are going to kind of define everything else, regardless of what's, you know, the intricacies of the actual project.
Thank you, David. Anything else? All right.
Yes.
I have
Matthew's
one
got a
question.
question.
Yes.
Wait. Who?
I
Matthew.
have one. Matthew has one.
Oh, I don't have a question. You have a question, Eric?
I do. I guess my question
Go ahead.
is what's our plan for outreach in advance of the special meeting next month?
The plan was the postcard sign and inviting people to comment. So we have a special email address they can comment to, which is on the sign and on the postcards.
The notion is that it will be a chance for the board to discuss, and certainly members of the public who want to attend are welcome, but I don't think the idea is that we're trying to encourage, you know, that
Massive attendance. Okay.
the community to comment ahead of time.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. Thank you.
Matthew?
Okay. Well, first, I'd like to thank these effective snail killers, Claudia and Barbara, and you two, as well as especially Nancy, for keeping the park planning process organized and moving forward. This is very good. And then I hope this is an appropriate moment to mention this. I was a sentence of background. Barbara and I were contacted by the fellow named Joe Falcone over at the Harbor District here at Princeton about doing walks as part of our recreation activities. And
I contacted him actually, but yes, go on.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
He's like their PR guy. And we went over and did a practice run, and then COVID put an end to that idea. But he's contacted me recently, and they're going to proceed with this kind of thing as videos that they'll put on their site and on YouTube. And he asked me to put in some a paragraph about prehistory and the Native Americans here. And I think that they also, Barb, like go do like our dry run before and distill that down into a short video and do the talks. And so it might be an idea that we could consider as well, doing those kinds of videos, or since we'll be participating, maybe we can just get the Harbor District to put it together and let us put it on our websites too.
Great idea.
Yeah.
I would think we could at least, even if it's on their website, put up a link on the parks page to their videos.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. Anything else on this item? All right, moving on. Number 3, consideration of resolution approving preliminary amended reassessments, ordering and directing actions with respect thereto, sewage treatment facility improvements, integrated financing district.
Chuck, you want me
Right,
to?
you want to give a little background on that?
Sure. This is the second step in the process of apportionments for the assessment district, which is recognizing parcel changes. The board approved directing the assessment district administrator to generate the report, which is attached. It's the preliminary amended reassessment report for 1920. And what I'm looking for is for the approval of that preliminary report, and also the setting of a hearing, which would be at the next meeting on September 17th, where the final approval would be to accept these parcel changes.
Any discussion?
There is an accompanying resolution as well.
Do you have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll move that we approve the resolution and that we approve having the final step of this at the next meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? We need a roll call on this.
Barbara, I just want to make sure there's no members of the public that want to speak to this.
Don't
Yeah,
see-
there's nobody on, Bill, or Michelle is, I think, back.
Okay.
Michelle
Okay.
Hello, Michelle.
and Nancy. Nancy's technically a member.
But I'm nice.
You are. If you wanted to speak, you would be welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
All right, I'll call the vote. Director Sukamel,
Aye.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Dye,
Aye.
Director Seaton. David,
Aye. Can you hear me?
all right. And Director Blanchard is absent. Motion passes 4-0.
All right. Consideration of Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side Report. Well, our last meeting was canceled. The wet weather storage project is going to be on the agenda next Monday night. We still do not have a staff report on that or an agenda, but there's been a lot of back and forth about that. I don't know what to say.
And neither do I. So
It's very complicated.
I think I sent you John Rayner's comments on the report, right?
No, I'm not sure you did. Like you said.
I think I did. The Woodward
All right,
Woodward Curran.
Oh, yes. Well, on the Woodward Curran report. Anyway, this is the proposal to build an additional 200,000 gallons of storage on the Burnham Strip property, partially funded by the rebate on the fine for the spill, which would go toward this property. This additional storage would provide stormwater, additional storage in the case of major storms, and there are alternative options that have been proposed, including increasing the pump sizes in the Portola pump station. Anyone who's interested can look on the SAM agenda, which should have been out today. It will be out tomorrow for the reports, but it's a complicated project. For us, it does make a difference because if they are going to do this project, we certainly want it accomplished before we start building a park there, which I think realistically we know we're not going to. The chances are remote that we build a park before 2 years, but there are grading restrictions after October 1st. The county has restrictions against grading. So I understand that you can grade if you do a lot of additional erosion control measures after October 1st. So there's a lot of things up in the air. I'd be able to report on the decision that's taken at our next meeting.
And Barbara, if you don't mind, if I could reframe the discussion a little bit. The real decision is not whether to build a 200,000 gallon storage tank. It's what is the best method to prevent sewer spills. So that's the bigger picture question. And there's a 200,000 gallon option. There's a 400,000 gallon option. There's the bigger pumps option. And there's a bunch of things. So, and let me, if I can, just go one more. Remember, they also don't have an easement on our property for the storage tanks, and they certainly don't have an easement or possibly room for 400,000 gallons on Burnham Park.
So how do we factor the decision that was the justification for the original purpose was exclusively sewer driven? And then now there's a conflict between, hey, this is a great place to expand it, but hey, this could impact our future parks. What is that conflict that's going on in terms of at what point we have to address it? That is a real conflict.
Yeah, David, it's still a sewer discussion because again, the real principle is how are we going to prevent sewer spills, right? That's still the basic conversation. But then how do we do that and how does it impact our park? And it's two pieces of the conversation.
It's just so funny. It's funny how I remember talking when I first ran saying, you're going to look back and say, why build this? And if you're going to build it, you're going to need to build it twice as big. And it's funny. I thought that would be 20 years. It's funny, the time frames, these considerations, how quick things happen. It's amazing, but that's a real consideration. We have to, it's out there now, because originally that was all sewer. Now there is a conflict with Parks and Recreation. And so
No, there's not
something-
a conflict, David. I'd say.
well, we
there's
wouldn't
a-
be, we would
there's an-
be
there's
100%.
There's an
Yeah, there is a
integrate-
conflict. You gotta, there is
Timing
absolutely.
issue. There's a time.
Yeah, no, there's a conflict because the greater that you expand and protect the community from a sewage capacity, the more, the lower of a quality of park you get. The smellier it's going to be, the harder it's going to be when you do need to go in. Yes, when you do need to go in and do maintenance, you're going to have to tear things up, close down sections of the park. Yes. There's going to be so absolutely there is a conflict.
David, I actually do this for a living, so no, they're not going to have to close down the parks to do this stuff. It's not a conflict, it's an integration. So I don't want to argue with you about this thing, but
I think the decision point is a conflict.
Consideration.
Yeah, I would say
Or
down
a
the
timing
road.
issue, and we have several years before we're even going to break ground on the park, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Yes, but it's more to the point, to solve the sewer problem, the sewer spill issue. I think we need to look at everything.
Yes.
Okay.
But
One
I
comment.
just
I have a
focusing on that
comment.
truck because it affected our property.
No.
I have a comment. I hope Sam gets off the dime and decides to do the $200,000 gallon. I wish it was $200,000 expansion. And I will note that the first 200,000 gallon storage facility was built during the rainy season. I know because I walked by one day and the big pit was filled with water. And so they can do it during after the 1st of October. They did that last time.
I'm just saying, do you notice people walk by there? My kid's 5 years old and goes, "Daddy, why does it smell like the toilet down here?" I'm just saying, when we're doubling the capacity.
That's not the wet weather storage, David. That's the pump station.
I mean, there is long-term, if you're going to be using stuff, it's going to be sitting there. It sits there eventually.
No.
And it's just kicking. That's the thing it was an outdated project to begin with. And then if you did it, you should have doubled it. And now we're going in. It's like crazy. This is.
David, a couple comments. Number one, the smell you smell is the Portola pump station, which has stunk long before the storage pipes. And I'm actually agreeing with you. I think there might be a better solution than the storage tanks and upsizing the pump.
I'm just saying, sewer and parks don't mix, aren't the perfect mix. So it is. You do got to realize there's a conflict between that. A hotel and a residential doesn't even mix. So sewer and parks are the extreme opposites. I'm saying there is a conflict. We do have to factor that into decision making. I'm having a hard time even because we have to weigh the highest and best use potential parks, all that versus what's actually needs to be done in terms of sewer capacity issues. So that is a real thing that I think.
Storage is rarely used and should not impact our park, but that's a discussion for another night. Let's move on. Okay, so moving on to the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda? All right, does someone want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda. Item 5, July 16, 2020 special and regular meeting minutes. Item 6, August 2020 warrants. Item 7, June 2020 financial statements. Item 8, assessment district distribution number 2-20/21. And item 9, LAIF quarterly investment report for June 30th, 2020.
Thank you, Matthew. Is there a second?
I will second.
Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call?
Okay, on motion of Director Clark, seconded by Director Sugamel. Call the question. Director Sugamel, your vote.
Aye.
Director Clark.
No, I mean aye.
Was good. Director Dye.
Yes.
And Director Seaton.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on.
Motion
committee
passes
reports.
4-0 with Director Blanchard absent.
All right. Moving on to reports. Wait, what is it? Committee reports. I have a few reports on meetings I've attended. Does anyone else? Okay, I attended the LAFCO meeting on behalf of Director Sukamel. It was interesting. They are doing reviews right now of the Resource Conservation District, which is out for comment until tomorrow. City of South San Francisco, the Westboro Water District, the City of Millbrae, and they are talking about beginning a special review of the Harbor District to be completed by November. So it was very interesting to attend. Thank you, Eric, for having me go in your place. I enjoyed it. Any questions on that? I don't. And then
Thank you for going for me. I at a
interesting.
birthday party I could not beg off of.
Yeah. And then Claudia and I attended a meeting of the Friends of Half Moon Bay Parks and Recreation at their request. They are pretty much the group that's looking to raise funding for a pool. They're working on a MOU with Half Moon Bay. They were hoping that we would be in a position to make a major contribution to their project. We explained a bit about who we are and how we're supported and so forth. They're an interesting group and they are working hard. We said that perhaps they could make a presentation to the Parks and Recreation, the Parks Advisory Committee, and didn't make any commitments, but it was interesting to hear what they're working on right now to do a pool. And they would prefer to have the pool not on school district property so that it would be available to a larger segment of the community. So that was interesting.
Do they have a spot they have in mind, Barbara? Or are they
not exactly, no. So they have some.
I would say Michelle might want to get in touch with them about her harbor
Yes.
idea.
Yeah. And then the last one I went to was a meeting that was attended by David and myself and Claudia with Caltrans, talking about the issues with Caltrans and the park, the future park. There was a very big team there from Caltrans. Approximately 10 people were on the call from Caltrans, plus it was attended by Steve and Tom from K&K, Joe Leclerc from Connect the Coast, which was great to have him there. And as I said, David, myself, and Claudia. I think that's all from our team. They indicated that they do not see any relocation of the highway anytime soon. It's going to be very expensive and have a lot of impacts. They have set up a meeting. We're going to have a meeting at the end of next week with the Caltrans people who are dealing with the Coastal Commission and the requirement of their permit for the armoring of the coast. It requires that they have a plan for the relocation of Highway 1. So we will find out more about that next week. But these are kind of some of the boxes that we wanted to kick off and people we wanted to consult with before we move forward with our park project. Just a lot of different discussions. It was very positive, and we were able to meet a number of the people on their team. They are working with Connect the Coast on potential crossing of Highway 1. So it was a good meeting and it was very helpful, and I'm looking forward to the follow-up meeting. So those are the 3 meetings I have attended recently. Anyone else have any meetings they want to report on? Anyone have any questions? Okay. And then attorney's report.
No report.
General manager's report.
I've got nothing further.
Administrative staff report.
I just want to, can you hear me? I just want to report on a meeting that I attended today with Bob Nisbet, the Half Moon Bay City Manager, with Terry Kaiser from State Parks, Nicholas Calderon from County Parks, Kevin Woodhouse from, he's the City Manager in Pacifica, Matthew Chichester, who's the Assistant City of Half Moon Bay Manager, Jim Pruitt, who's with the Harbor District, and they were talking about possible future closures of beaches. And they're asking for our cooperation in the future. Should they decide to close all of the beaches, they would also be closing all of the parking lots, which they would want us to be included. And they will give us advance notice. They were initially talking about primarily doing that for the upcoming Labor Day weekend, which is September 7th. But there could be other times that they may institute closures for emergency access or what have you due to the fire. So I just want to let you know that that is a possibility. We would have future notice, advance notice.
The last time they requested that we close our lot when the beaches were closed, I consulted with Matthew and we made the decision to leave it open.
I know. Yeah, they really would like to see everyone cooperate, and they didn't officially close Surfers Beach last time, so they would have to do that because otherwise they're just pushing. They're going to put out a media blitz if they do this to tell everybody not to come. And so they will try and speak with the news channels to make sure that people know not to come.
The reason we didn't agree to close ours, and they were not happy about it, but nobody's going to come. Nobody's going to know our lot is still open, and it's not going to bring more people here. And it really protects the people of our community from impacts of people parking in the residential area.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Such a small lot. And the other thing is we don't have the infrastructure actually to close it. We don't have the fences. We borrowed them last time to close off that lot. So I don't know.
I think their intent is to try to stop people from coming down altogether and make it difficult so that they don't come.
Yeah, but it's not like people are going to go, I heard there's one tiny dirt lot open, so let's go.
Right. Well, I just wanted to let you know. It may or may not happen. We don't know. So.
Anyone else have an opinion on that?
So the city of Half Moon Bay, Adam Eisen, they are going to close the beaches there.
Last I heard before this meeting started, that they were going to close their beaches, but State Parks was not closing theirs, correct?
Well, there is a coordination issue, but I'm going to interview Adam tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So if you want to hear the latest, but he's trying to get the state on board as well, because if we don't have an evacuation route, we're screwed.
I completely agree with that.
I know. So put as much pressure as you can. And, Adam was talking at, the Newsom level. So, I mean, it's not like he's not trying. It's just like you have so many jurisdictions. So
that's what the meeting was for today. They were trying to coordinate all of the jurisdictions because they don't feel it's effective if everybody doesn't participate.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if everyone else is participating, I think it's incumbent on us to do so as well.
But we could have CERT people out in the neighborhoods encouraging people to go back. What Adam is trying to do is actually to try to get Caltrans to return people at Crystal Springs.
Great.
I mean, considering the fire, the unique situation, I mean, that's where this goes beyond anything. If there's even a hint of possibility where that fire is coming from Santa Cruz, it's ripping through the middle. Those things move so quick. If there's even a hint of that, then that's where I kind of change everything. I agree. It doesn't do anything. That's all it does is it stops no one from coming down. It just forces them to park by my house instead of right there. That's the only thing that changes. So, but if there's a safety with the fire on weekends, I do see some validity to, let's get on board. And for a week or two, we could kind of be a little bit over controlling in terms of saying, listen, go back home unless you really need to be here, or at least putting that messaging out there.
Thank you. Nancy, you wanted to speak?
So I had a sense from the comments that we're getting in on the park that a lot of the people who use that dirt lot park are actually local residents in El Granada who just come closer to the beach and park there. So one of the projects I was going to give to myself when I feel like giving up a Saturday is just to go out with a clipboard, and as people are parking, ask where they're from. So that when we talk about that lot being a lot for the beach, and a lot of people park there for the beach, but they're not necessarily people from outside the area. It's you know, maybe as far as Montera, and maybe some come up from Half Moon Bay for Surfers Beach, but I don't know how much is really outside the coast side. But I'd like to know what share. I think Matthew asked at one meeting, should we be doing parking, you know, for the coast, or should we be doing parking for the park? I do want to try to sort out what share of the people who use that lot are our constituents.
Good idea.
I do agree with the point that if we somehow come up with barriers and close it off, all it does is block the post office and block the residential.
And the apartments, it really hit the apartments hard.
Yeah, even though I made a sign and put it next, you know, where people park to go into the post office, saying, please keep spots available, because it made people really mad when people were parked in those spots by the post office. Anyway. Anything else on that?
That's it.
Engineers report?
Nothing further. You had your little walkthrough with John. That was good.
Yeah, yes, thank you very much. I had always wanted to understand what was going on with the Murata crossing, the Murata sewer, the whole issue there. And so I got to meet him. He was there actually for another purpose. He was able to double purpose his trip. And so now I understand exactly what was going on there, which is extremely helpful, because it was the week before they closed the bridge.
Yeah, John's a good guy. Yeah, he's a good engineer.
Yeah. It's not the big pipe that's carrying our sewage now. There's a small
Correct. Pipe.
PVC. What do you say? Call that pipe? It's
HDPE.
It's an HDPE
Right.
pipe that's small, that goes across, that carries the sewage from those houses right there. There's a little pump under the street. It's sending it over there, but they're going to reroute it, just so I can show I understood, up the street and then down the old railroad right of way, which is
right.
That's why we needed the access permit from state parks. And then, but they have to redig the whole thing. They already have a sewer line in the southern half, but they have to redo the whole thing to get the right grades, to get the sewage from those houses down to the line further south. So that's what they're doing.
That was a phenomenal technical explanation.
Well, anyway, it was what it was. So is there anything else that we need to talk about?
Yeah, I was just going to talk about, for future agenda items, if we could, on the next meeting, I haven't made many requests, revisit agenda item 1 from tonight. I do believe there was substantially changed information from the first, second, and you guys didn't take into fact that there was a good faith, you know, understanding that there was, yes, they agree to approve and that they pay, but that there was, you know, an exploration of, let's see what else is out there. Even Barbara was the first one to go down that path. I think all I'm asking is, I would like to revisit the second, especially since I made it. I don't believe that there was a good faith by the board. If you look at a reasonable, you know, in terms of, we spent a long time talking about it, and then at the end, it's like, you know, I feel like I want to at least revisit it. I'm open to keeping it brief, but I do feel like from what Eric said and what Chuck said was substantially changed enough, and there was no, you know, if we're not gonna have discussion, then there's no point in discussion. But the discussion for almost 15, 20 minutes was all along the same page of exploring it, and being a lot of confusion, a lot of misunderstandings, that, you know, where things were at. And I think everyone at some point almost admitted that there was piece of the puzzle. And I think because of all that, that second was made. My second was made with understanding the discussion that ensued after that. And so if you guys are going to say, the discussion doesn't matter, it's exactly, then I'm going to say that my second, if we're going to go back and look at the technical tape, I am going to review it. So at the next meeting, we will have this agenda item. If I'm missing something, then we could keep it brief, but I would like to at least revisit that And because I do think that there was some bad faith in terms of not that, or, you know, not, like I said, almost 15 minutes of discussion that we're going to say is irrelevant, because there is something technical to saying approve and pay, but there's a lot of other things, timing of payments and other options that they're reaching out, saying what's out there, and at least say, let's, yeah, we'll consider, you know, in terms of
David,
what there
David,
is. So
Can we make it
considering
shorter
that I
than
made the second,
request?
if I didn't make the
David,
second, I
we're
wouldn't be saying
making-
this. But I'm saying that my
David,
second was made on different grounds
I know,
than
but David,
so
you just
I
made
would
your
like to
point. You made your point.
okay.
What you're saying.
So if we get
But I will
can talk
point
about this in
out,
the next
when
board
you
meeting.
voted yes, I said, David, that's not what you mean, because, you know, so that was.
I voted yes to the motion. The motion still itself
He must
stands. It's the
understood.
underlying discussion behind it. There's more
right.
nuance to it. And so
Does
if you guys are
anyone
gonna ignore that,
else
you're
on
doing
the-
that in bad faith. And that's where it upsets me a little bit, like, because I can't go to the next step and say, wait a second, is there an element of an outside board, a little bit of bad faith going on, rushing, let's get through this.
David, enough with the
Most
accusation.
government agencies, when there's one dissenting group, from the lowest levels, school boards, to the highest levels in our country, they say, you know what? If there's a little bit of filibustering, uncertainty, let's delay.
Thank you, David. We hear your point. Is there anyone else on the board who would like to bring this back at our next meeting? Matthew?
If the proponents show up with some actual plan other than what we saw tonight, I would reconsider it, but I wouldn't initiate it.
What kind of plan would you be looking for?
If they could walk in with the bond that they're talking about, that was 4 times what the actual cost is going to be, because everybody knows bonds do get defaulted on, and
let me, we do
So
these
that's
with
enough to say, then that's, then we
do
should
this
consider
with
it.
construction
And we
bonds.
could continue this conversation. then.
David, you made your point. You really did. We heard you. We really did. Chuck?
Yeah, so when they post bonds, pulling a construction bond is fantastically difficult, and literally, I've never seen one pulled successfully when the contractor or somebody else has not performed. So I think to the broader point, and I don't want to get into too much of a discussion here because it was on the agenda, but it's not now. But the big question is, do we want to start treating people or projects differently? That's the big question. And I think it goes back to my original point. If this was a quote unquote developer friendly board, you'd be granting favors to developers, and it's all
and we could grant variances to our friends in different
decisions.
We've always granted variances. We have that. It's the merits of the actual, and that's where I think I do want more discussion around that, is the merits of what's actually in front of us. I'm willing to say that there's a line in the sand where something's right and something's wrong. This is something that I would like to consider more, and at least, know with all my heart that I'm going to look at every possibility and said, you know what? The best we could do is, like we said, is be as fair as possible, like we are to everyone. But that's at a minimum, no matter what. I'm saying I want to consider, the details of the percentage of disabled versus, and I'm just asking. I made the second
multiple times, David.
So let's get it on the agenda so we can talk about it next meeting instead of tonight. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
I know what you're asking for, and we are seriously considering it. Okay. Seriously. Eric, where do you stand on this?
I mean, I made a considered decision for my vote based on the information they presented, based on the information Chuck and Bill gave me. I don't see my vote changing in the absence of new information. If the applicant wants to be on the agenda and present something, I will certainly listen to it. But absent that, I don't see things changing.
So all the board members have said they're open to hearing now from them. And I think that's all at the end of the day,
I am only willing, I agree with Eric. I am only willing to hear from him if there's something new that is
Can I
different
make a suggestion?
presented. Yes.
Can I make a suggestion? Bill Parkin had mentioned that there are some requirements to be met for waivers. Maybe staff could look at those waivers and see if, you know, possibly there's something that could be presented in that area.
I think they've already looked at that, but okay. All right, so I think if there's something new for us to consider that we did not consider tonight, then it is potentially on our next agenda. Okay, David?
Thank you.
So I want to understand this because there are certain parliamentary procedures here. Number one, you've made a motion, you've approved the motion. So it's either an appeal by the applicant or it's a motion for reconsideration. The motion for reconsideration can only be made by someone who's on, we follow Robert's Rules of Order. So it can only be made for someone who's on the prevailing side of the motion, which is not Director Seaton. So
I don't, and Bill, I'm not sure we
I'm
follow
going back
Robert's
to the
Rules of Order.
And I made the second. If I didn't make the second, I understand that. But I'm saying my second was based on other nuanced discussion that we had for 15 minutes. We could go back on tape. We'll hear Barbara recommending it. It was her idea that I got behind. And so we'll go back on the tape and we'll look at it. But you guys, that's all I'm saying is let's take a look at it. Let's see what's on the table. And instead of talking about it right now, let's talk about it as a I could ask for more. I'm just saying, hey, we'll be brief next time. I hope everybody's a little more prepared. Board members, them, if they want to come, anything. All I want to say is, hey, that second does not stand because you guys did not take into consideration the nuance behind. There is something different between approving and paying and all the other, bond issues and timing of payments and everything else that we talked about. But then you guys ignore it and rush through. And if you guys want to, as a board, once again, take the stand, no, we're not going to even hear you as a dissenting board member. We're not going to give you the time of day. As a governmental board, if you guys want to err on that side, then go ahead. Otherwise, I would say I'm assuming we'll at least have a few minutes at the next meeting to talk about this again.
Well, I'll only do it if you promise it'll be shorter than the request you just made.
I will. I'll try to be a little bit more organized, and I hope everyone will, because I do feel like it was a conversation that kind of evolved in lots of different paths.
I object to bringing the same matter back without.
Well, I mean, so from Bill's perspective, so if they choose to appeal, they need to go through that process, correct, Bill?
Right.
That is.
That's correct. Or
Barbara, David, or I'm sorry, Barbara, Matthew, or myself would need to
make a motion to reconsider. And I'm not suggesting, David, that it can't be reheard. I'm just trying to make sure this is complicated enough already, and it's an important issue. And I'm concerned, about some of the legal issues. So I want to make sure you follow the right parliamentary procedure.
What would the legal issues be? As far as what?
We're not going to discuss this now.
Well, and let's keep in mind
it's pretty clear. It's as simple as this. When you vote on something and you say something, and then the board votes, there needs to be clear understanding of what that is.
David. We cannot have this discussion at this point in the meeting. We can't have an agenda item that we've already discussed in front of the public and voted. It's not right. It's not the right way to do it. So I think if several of us have said in response to your request that if there is new information, we'll look at it. So that we have to leave it there. We cannot have a long discussion of it now.
Okay, and that's all I'm asking for is an agenda item where we could revisit and bring up new information, and everyone is as brief as possible.
All right. Is there anything further?
I would just say I hope Bill is staying safe because things look pretty dicey down there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Jonathan?
Jonathan's evacuated.
Yes.
We're all evacuated.
Oh, you're evacuated too.
Pearl is. I'm not. I'm good, but not. I'm so far. I'm good. But
wow.
Thank you, Eric, for those thoughts.
And for the record, my air conditioning has my house at 74 degrees.
Oh, shut
Truly, you're suffering down there.
Yeah, well, you just
Chuck
live
is
in
rubbing it in
That's a little
again.
inside joke between Bill and I.
Chuck is rubbing it in again. I can't breathe outside, so I'm keeping all the windows closed because we don't have air conditioning in Aptos, right? So it's miserable.
I can't hear you
Thank
over
you,
my
everyone,
condenser.
for being part of a difficult meeting, and we will see you at our next meeting.
Are
Lots of
we
good-
adjourned?
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.